Rain hammered the windows in steady sheets, blurring the world beyond the glass. Daniel Pratt stood in his dim living room, half listening to the storm, half trying to settle into another quiet evening alone. He had grown used to the silence these past few months, though he wouldn't have called it comfort. The knock came again. Louder this time. Daniel crossed the room and opened the door, and there stood Ethan Warren, the boy from next door. Except Ethan wasn't really a boy anymore. He was freshly 18, just graduated, though Daniel still remembered him as the kid who used to rollerblade down the street like he owned it. Now he stood on Daniel's porch soaked from head to toe. Rainwater streamed off his hair and jacket. His backpack clung to him, heavy and dripping. "Sorry," Ethan said, breath uneven. "I know it's late. My parents aren't home, and I didn't know where else to go." Daniel stepped aside without thinking. "Get in here before you drown out there." Ethan slipped past him, shivering as he entered the warm house. Daniel closed the door, cutting off the roar of the wind. The sudden quiet felt thick. "What happened?" Daniel asked. Ethan pushed wet hair off his forehead. "Walked home from work. Thought I'd beat the storm. Didn't make it." Daniel took in the soaked clothes, the goosebumps rising on Ethan's arms, the slight tremble in his hands. Something tugged at the protective part of him, the part he usually kept buried. "Let's get you a towel," Daniel said. "You're freezing." He disappeared into the hallway closet and returned with 2 large towels. Ethan muttered a soft thank you and wrapped one around his shoulders. Daniel watched the tension slowly loosen in him as the warmth sank in. "You need dry clothes," Daniel said. "Wait here." In his bedroom, Daniel dug through drawers and closet shelves until he found something that might fit, an old sweatshirt and a pair of joggers with a drawstring. They would be a little big, but they'd work. When he returned, Ethan stood in the living room staring at the framed photo on the bookshelf, Daniel and his ex-wife in happier days. A painful memory, but Daniel didn't comment. "These should fit well enough," Daniel said. Ethan nodded and accepted the clothes, fingers brushing Daniel's for a brief moment. Daniel felt a surprising jolt, quick and warm, before he stepped back. "You can change in the bathroom," Daniel said quickly. Ethan headed down the hall, leaving Daniel alone with the soft patter of rain against the roof. He walked to the window and stared out at the dark street. He told himself he only felt unsettled because he wasn't used to unexpected company. But deep down, he already knew that wasn't the whole truth. Minutes passed before Ethan returned, clothes slightly oversized but dry. His hair was still damp, curling at the ends. His expression looked softer now, less guarded. "These feel good," Ethan said quietly. Daniel nodded. "You warm enough?" "Getting there." Ethan hesitated. "Thanks for letting me in. I know you didn't have to." Daniel waved it off. "It's just rain. Anyone would have done the same." Ethan's eyes met his. There was something in them Daniel couldn't quite read. Something grateful. Something tired. Something more. Daniel cleared his throat and headed to the kitchen. "Let me make you some hot chocolate or tea. That storm's not letting up anytime soon." "Hot chocolate sounds good," Ethan said. Daniel set water to boil and pulled out the cocoa mix. Behind him, Ethan hovered in the doorway, towel still around his shoulders. "You okay?" Daniel asked without turning. "Yeah," Ethan said. "Just, rough night. Rough week, actually." Daniel glanced over his shoulder. "You want to talk about it?" Ethan shrugged. "Not sure you want to hear it." "You came here," Daniel said gently. "Kind of means you needed someone." Ethan stared at the floor. Daniel waited, letting silence do the work. "My parents have been fighting a lot," Ethan finally said. "Lately it feels like the whole house is cracked down the middle. Tonight it was bad. I left early for work just to get out of there." Daniel felt something tighten in his chest. He had no children of his own, but he knew the weight of a household filled with things left unsaid. He knew how heavy unhappy walls could feel. "You didn't want to go back tonight," Daniel said. Ethan swallowed. "No. I couldn't. And your lights were on, so I just hoped." Daniel poured the hot chocolate into a mug and handed it to him. Ethan wrapped both hands around it, letting the heat seep through his fingers. He took a small sip. "This is really good," he murmured. Daniel leaned against the counter. "You can stay until the rain slows down. Or longer, if you need." Ethan looked up. His expression flickered surprise, relief, something Daniel didn't want to name. "Are you sure?" Ethan asked. "Absolutely," Daniel said. They moved back to the living room. Ethan sat on the couch, pulling Daniel's sweatshirt tighter around him. Daniel took the armchair across from him. Outside, thunder rolled across the neighborhood, low and rumbling. Ethan looked toward the storm. "You ever feel like the weather matches your life?" Daniel huffed a quiet laugh. "More often than I'd admit." "Yeah," Ethan whispered. "Me too." Daniel watched him, the way his shoulders slowly relaxed, the way he held the mug close like it was keeping him grounded. A strange feeling settled over Daniel. Not uncomfortable. Just unexpected. Ethan spoke again, voice softer. "You always seemed steady. Even when things were falling apart around you." Daniel blinked. "You noticed that?" Ethan nodded. "I notice a lot more than people think." The room felt warmer suddenly, though the temperature hadn't changed. Daniel looked away, focusing on the bookshelf, the framed photos, anything that didn't involve the intensity of Ethan's gaze. Thunder cracked again. The house trembled for a moment. Ethan set his empty mug on the coffee table. His voice dropped, barely above a whisper. "Daniel, can I ask you something?" Daniel looked back at him. "Of course." Ethan hesitated, opening his mouth, then closing it again as if weighing every word. I feel safer here than I have in a long time," he said. "And I don't really understand why." Daniel's breath caught. Before he could respond, the lights flickered, once, twice, then the house fell into sudden darkness. Ethan let out a small gasp. Daniel stood, heart beating faster for reasons beyond the power outage. "Stay right there," he said. "I'll find some candles." But even as he said it, he felt a shift inside him, subtle, quiet, but real. And he had no idea where it would lead. Darkness settled over the house like a thick blanket. The storm outside rumbled on, its restless energy pushing against the windows. Daniel stood still for a moment, letting his eyes adjust. Ethan remained on the couch, only a faint outline in the dim light leaking through the curtains. "You okay?" Daniel asked. "Yeah," Ethan said, though his voice trembled just a little. "Just didn't expect that. Power goes out all the time on this street during storms," Daniel said gently. "You're safe." Daniel moved toward the hallway closet to grab candles and a lighter. As he rummaged through the shelf, he could hear Ethan's quiet breathing from the living room. Something about the sound tugged at him more than he wanted to admit. He returned with 2 thick candles and set them on the coffee table. The warm flame flickered to life, stretching long shadows across the walls. The glow revealed Ethan's face, softer now, his eyes reflecting the candlelight. "Better?" Daniel asked. Ethan nodded. "A lot." Daniel sat back in the armchair, but the room felt different now, intimate, almost fragile. The storm hummed outside. Inside, everything felt hushed and close. Ethan pulled the blanket draped over the couch around his shoulders. He looked smaller somehow, not physically, but in the way a person does when they're finally letting themselves breathe. "Sorry about earlier," Ethan said. "I didn't mean to drop all of that on you." "It's all right," Daniel replied. "You needed to say it." Ethan gave him a slow, grateful smile. For a while, they just listened to the storm. Thunder rolled in the distance, but the worst had passed. Rain softened into a steady patter. Ethan exhaled and leaned back. "I didn't know where else to go. I didn't want to go to a friend's place. Didn't want anyone asking questions I can't answer." "You don't owe anyone explanations," Daniel said. "Sometimes you just need a place to land." Ethan studied him with an intensity that made Daniel shift slightly in the chair. "You really mean that," Ethan said. "I do." Ethan hesitated, then spoke again, voice quieter this time. "Back when I was a kid, you always felt like the one adult on this street who wasn't pretending. Everyone else acted like everything had to be perfect. You didn't." Daniel felt something twist inside him. He hadn't expected that. "I didn't think you paid much attention back then." "Oh, I did, Ethan said softly. More than you know. Daniel looked away again, clearing his throat. He picked up the candle and adjusted its position, more for something to do than anything else. He wasn't used to being seen this clearly. The storm continued easing. The house settled into a calmer quiet. You want some more hot chocolate? Daniel asked. Ethan's smile brightened. Yeah. I'd like that. Daniel headed to the kitchen, lit by a single candle he carried with him. As he boiled water again, he found himself replaying Ethan's words. He'd spent so long feeling like he moved through life unnoticed. Yet here Ethan was, remembering things Daniel had forgotten himself. When Daniel returned with 2 mugs, Ethan scooted slightly to make room on the couch. You can sit here, Ethan said. If you want. Daniel paused. It was a simple offer. Innocent. But it warmed something inside him he didn't want to examine too closely. He sat on the far end of the couch, leaving space between them. The candle cast their shadows across the room, merging and stretching over the wall. Ethan cupped the mug in both hands, letting the warmth sink in. This feels nice, he said quietly. What does? Daniel asked. This. Being here. Not feeling like I have to hide how tired I am. Daniel nodded. I know that feeling. Ethan sipped the hot chocolate, then set the mug down. His expression shifted, thoughtful, searching. Can I ask something? He said. Go ahead. When you went through your divorce, did you ever feel like you were losing pieces of yourself one at a time? Daniel froze for a moment. The question hit deeper than he expected. Yes, Daniel said. Every day. Ethan nodded slowly. That's how it feels at home. Like if I stay there too long, I'll forget who I'm supposed to be. Daniel's chest tightened. He wanted to say something comforting, something sure, but the truth was, he didn't have the perfect words. What you're feeling makes sense, Daniel said. Chaos at home can make anyone feel lost. Ethan looked at him again, eyes steady on Daniel's face. You don't talk down to me. Why would I? Most adults do. Daniel let out a quiet breath. You're not a kid, Ethan. Ethan's gaze lingered on him, long enough for Daniel to feel warmth rising beneath his skin. He looked away again. A soft rumble of thunder rolled across the neighborhood, but it sounded far away now. Ethan spoke again, voice barely above a whisper. Daniel, can I tell you something without you thinking it's strange? Daniel turned to him slowly. You can tell me anything. Ethan shifted slightly, pulling the blanket tighter. When I knocked on your door tonight, I panicked on the walkover. I kept thinking you'd turn me away. But another part of me kept hoping you wouldn't. That part won. Daniel swallowed. I'm glad it did. Ethan's breath caught for a moment. Daniel heard it. They both felt the shift. The candle flickered, the shadows trembling across their faces. I don't know why it felt like the right door, Ethan said softly. It just did. Daniel forced himself to breathe evenly. Sometimes instinct knows before we do. Ethan nodded, but his eyes didn't leave Daniel's. The silence thickened again, warm and fragile. After a long moment, Daniel stood. His voice stayed steady even as his heart stirred with something he didn't want to name. You should get some rest, he said. The storm's not going anywhere, and you're exhausted. Ethan looked toward the hallway, then back at Daniel. Where should I sleep? You can take the guest room, Daniel said gently. It's more comfortable. Ethan rose slowly, his expression soft but unreadable. Okay, he whispered. Thank you. For everything tonight. Daniel walked him to the spare room. Ethan stepped inside, turning once more toward him. Good night, Daniel, he said softly. Good night. Daniel closed the door gently, then leaned against the wall, exhaling a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Something had changed tonight, something small but unmistakable. And Daniel knew nothing about his life would feel quite the same again. Morning crept in slowly, gentle and grey after the long storm. Daniel woke to the faint sound of rain dripping from the gutters, the kind of quiet that follows a night of heavy weather. He sat up, rubbing the sleep from his eyes, and for a moment he forgot there was someone else in the house. Then memory rushed back, the knock on the door, Ethan's soaked jacket, the candlelight, the quiet conversations that felt too honest for a single night. Daniel exhaled, steadying himself. He got dressed and stepped into the hallway. The guest room door was still closed. For a second, Daniel wondered whether Ethan had really slept at all. He made coffee in the kitchen, the smell filling the warm air. A few minutes later, the guest room door opened softly. Ethan walked out wearing the sweatshirt Daniel had given him, sleeves pushed up slightly. His hair was tousled, his eyes still heavy with sleep. "Morning," Ethan murmured. "Morning," Daniel replied. "Did you sleep okay?" Ethan nodded. "Better than I have in a while." Daniel handed him a mug of coffee. Ethan accepted it with both hands again, the way he had the hot chocolate the night before. He blew on the surface before taking a small sip. "Thanks," he said gently. "For this. And for letting me stay." "Of course," Daniel said. "No need to thank me." They stood there for a moment, the quiet stretching between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. Just still. Soft. Ethan leaned against the counter. "My parents probably got back late last night. They won't notice I wasn't home." Daniel frowned slightly. "That doesn't seem right." Ethan gave a small, tired shrug. "It's normal for them." Daniel didn't push, though the urge to do so tugged at him. "You're welcome to stay until things calm down," Daniel said. "You don't have to rush out." Ethan looked down at his coffee, then up again. "I kind of don't want to go back yet." Daniel nodded. "You can stay as long as you need." Those words landed with more weight than Daniel expected. Ethan's relief was quiet but unmistakable. They ate breakfast together, something simple, scrambled eggs and toast, and the morning light crept into the kitchen bit by bit. Ethan talked a little more than he had the night before, sharing small pieces of his life. The job he worked after school. His plans to take community college classes. The pressure he felt at home to be someone he wasn't even sure he wanted to be. Daniel listened, saying little, aware of how much the young man, had kept bottled up. After breakfast, Ethan carried his empty plate to the sink. His hand brushed Daniel's as he passed the dish over. That same quick jolt hit Daniel again, unexpected and warm. Ethan paused, eyes flicking up for just a second too long, before he stepped back. Daniel turned away, clearing his throat. I should check the power lines outside. Make sure nothing fell during the storm." "Can I come with you?" Ethan asked. Daniel hesitated. It was a simple request. Innocent. But something in Ethan's eyes made it feel like more. "Sure," Daniel said quietly. "Grab your jacket." They stepped outside onto the damp porch. The street looked washed clean, puddles glistening on the asphalt. Leaves littered the sidewalks. A few branches had snapped during the night. But the world felt calmer. Ethan walked beside Daniel, hands tucked into the sweatshirt pockets. The air was cool, but not uncomfortable. "You always walk like you're paying attention to everything," Ethan said suddenly. Daniel glanced at him. "What does that mean?" "You look around. You look up. Most people stare at the ground." Daniel laughed softly. "Comes from years of fixing things, I guess. Makes you pay attention." "I like it," Ethan said. "Feels grounded." Daniel didn't respond right away. He wasn't sure he could. They circled the front yard, checked the gutters, made sure no loose shingles had blown off. Ethan stayed close, asking questions about tools and repairs, listening with that same focus Daniel had noticed last night. When they finished, they leaned against the railing of the porch. Ethan crossed his arms loosely. "I always thought you were different from the other neighbors." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Different how?" "You never pretended to have everything together. You were quiet, but you actually cared. Not in a loud way. Just, consistently." Daniel felt heat rise in his chest. "You give me too much credit." "No," Ethan said. "I don't." Wind rustled through the wet maple trees at the curb. A car passed slowly down the street, sending ripples through the standing water. Ethan's voice dropped a little. "Last night. I didn't expect you to talk to me like that. You could have just handed me towels and let me stay in the guest room. But you didn't. You listened. You needed someone to," Daniel said. Ethan nodded. "It meant more than you know." A silence followed, soft, full of something Daniel didn't want to name. He finally spoke. "If things at home ever feel overwhelming, you can always knock on my door. You don't need a storm as an excuse." Ethan's breath hitched ever so slightly. "Really? Really?" Ethan's eyes softened. "That means a lot." Daniel looked away toward the street. He didn't want to see too much in Ethan's face. He didn't trust himself to. They stayed on the porch until the wind picked up again and the chill settled in deeper. Back inside, the house felt warm in contrast. Ethan slipped off his jacket. "Daniel." "Yeah. Can I ask you something? And you don't have to answer if it's too personal." Daniel nodded slowly. "Go ahead." Ethan hesitated. His fingers fidgeted with the sleeve of the sweatshirt. When he finally looked up, his eyes were steady. "When you were my age, did you ever feel like you were trying to be the version of yourself everyone expected instead of the version you actually were?" Daniel blinked. The question was sharp, direct, almost startling. "Yes," Daniel said quietly. "All the time." Ethan stepped a little closer, not invading Daniel's space, but close enough that Daniel felt the warmth of him. "Did it get easier?" Ethan asked. Daniel swallowed. "It got clearer. Not easier, but clearer." Ethan breathed out slowly, eyes searching Daniel's face as if looking for something he hadn't yet found. Daniel felt his heart thud once, heavy and slow. Before he could say anything else, Ethan spoke again, softer this time, almost afraid of the words. "I think that's why I came here last night. You feel clear." Daniel froze. Ethan's expression shifted with the weight of what he'd just said, vulnerable, unsure, but honest. The air between them tightened. Before Daniel could respond, a sudden knock sounded at the front door. Sharp. Unexpected. Ethan flinched, stepping back. Daniel's heart jumped. He moved toward the living room, unsure who would be visiting so early. He reached for the doorknob, exhaled once, then opened the door. And whatever calm they had found that morning began to shift again. Daniel opened the door slowly, bracing himself for anything except what he found on the porch. There stood Linda Warren, Ethan's mother, looking flustered, damp from the lingering mist, and clearly upset. Her eyes darted past Daniel immediately, scanning the house with sharp urgency. "Is Ethan here?" she asked, breath uneven. "He didn't come home last night." Daniel steadied his voice. "He's here. He got caught in the storm on the way back from work. I didn't want him walking home soaked." Linda pressed a hand to her chest. Relief washed over her face, but it didn't settle there for long. "Can I see him?" Daniel hesitated only a second before stepping aside. "Of course." Ethan appeared in the hallway, freezing when he saw her. His shoulders tensed, the small amount of peace he had gained that morning slipping away in an instant. "Mom," Ethan said quietly. Linda stepped forward, eyes shining with worry. "Ethan, why didn't you call? I woke up and your room was empty." "You and Dad were still arguing when I left," Ethan said softly. "I didn't want to make things worse." Linda's expression cracked. She looked suddenly older, tired in a way Daniel recognized from his own past. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Last night got out of hand. We shouldn't have dragged you into it." "You didn't drag me into anything," Ethan said gently. "It's just hard." Linda nodded, unable to speak for a moment. Daniel stepped back, giving them space, though he couldn't help the instinctive urge to stay close in case Ethan needed grounding. Linda finally turned to Daniel. "Thank you. I mean that. I'm glad he came to you instead of wandering around alone." Daniel offered a simple nod. "His welcome here anytime." Ethan glanced at Daniel, a small, subtle look, gratitude mixed with something deeper, something Daniel tried not to read too far into. Linda placed a hand on her son's arm. "Ethan, can we go home? Your dad and I talked this morning. Things are calmer." Ethan didn't answer right away. His fingers tightened slightly around the sleeve of Daniel's sweatshirt, almost as if he needed to hold onto something steady. "Yeah," Ethan said finally. "I'll come home." Linda let out a shaky breath of relief. Ethan turned to Daniel. "I'll come back later to return your clothes." "You don't have to rush," Daniel said. "Whenever you're ready." The house grew suddenly quiet again, the weight of unspoken things hanging between them. Ethan hesitated a second longer, then stepped outside with his mother. Daniel watched them walk down the porch steps. Ethan glanced back once, a look that held more than he could say in front of her. Then he disappeared into the car. Daniel closed the door slowly, the soft click echoing through the now quiet house. For the first time since the storm began, the silence felt hollow. He walked to the kitchen, rinsed the mugs from breakfast, wiped the counter, doing small things to keep his thoughts from spiraling. But Ethan's words from earlier kept looping in his mind. You feel clear. Daniel knew what Ethan meant. He also knew how dangerous it could be to misunderstand the kind of clarity a young man might seek when the world around him felt unsteady. He spent the next few hours trying not to read into anything. Not the look Ethan gave him. Not the way Ethan relaxed in his home. Not the quiet sense of connection the night had uncovered. He reminded himself Ethan was young, legally an adult, yes, but still finding his footing. Still figuring out who he was and what he wanted. Daniel wasn't going to be someone who complicated that. By early afternoon, he stepped outside to check the mailbox. The air felt different, brighter now that the storm clouds had lifted. When he returned to the porch, he saw a figure approaching from next door. Ethan. He wasn't wearing Daniel's clothes anymore. He stood straighter, calmer, though something in his expression still held a quiet edge of uncertainty. I didn't know if you'd be home, Ethan said. Daniel folded his arms loosely. I'm here. Ethan held out the folded sweatshirt and joggers. I washed them. Thought you might want them back. Daniel accepted them, but he could tell that wasn't the real reason Ethan had come. You okay? Daniel asked. Ethan nodded, though his gaze drifted away before returning. Mom and Dad are calm now. They apologized. I'm not sure what that means for the long run, but today is better. I'm glad to hear that. Ethan stepped closer to the porch, leaning against the railing just as they had that morning. I wanted to thank you, he said. For last night. And this morning. You didn't treat me like a problem you had to solve. You're not a problem, Daniel said gently. You're a person going through something difficult. Ethan's throat worked as he swallowed. It felt safe here. Daniel nodded, careful. That matters. I'm glad you felt that way. Ethan looked down at his hands. I don't want you to think I misunderstood anything. What I said earlier. I wasn't trying to put pressure on you. Daniel's heart tightened. You didn't. I just meant, you're steady. And I needed steady. That's all. Daniel let out a slow breath. Ethan, you're welcome to that steadiness. Truly. But I want you to make sure you're giving yourself room to figure out your own path. Not anyone else's. Ethan's lips parted as though he wanted to argue, but then he nodded instead. I know. They stood in a quiet that felt careful but warm. After a moment, Ethan spoke again. Daniel. Yeah. Can I still come by sometimes? Not like last night. Just to talk. Or sit on the porch. Or whatever. Daniel felt the answer settle in him with surprising ease. Of course, he said. Anytime. Ethan's shoulders loosened. Something brightened in his eyes, not romantic, not confused, just relieved. Grateful. Good, Ethan said softly. I didn't want last night to make things weird. It didn't, Daniel said. It just made things honest. Ethan breathed out slowly, and for the first time since the storm began, he looked truly steady. Okay, he whispered. Good. He stepped back from the railing. I should go check in with my mom. But I'll see you later. You will, Daniel said. Ethan turned, walked a few steps, then paused and glanced back with a gentleness Daniel hadn't expected. Thanks again, Ethan said. For being the door I could knock on. Daniel's chest tightened, but he stayed steady. You're welcome, he said. Ethan gave a small, sincere smile before heading home. Daniel stood on the porch long after the door next door closed. Something had shifted. Yes. But now, it shifted into something clearer, steadier, something that didn't need to be rushed or feared. And Daniel sensed that a different kind of storm was beginning to clear for them both. The next few days moved quietly, the way a neighborhood settles after a heavy storm. The sky stayed clear. The evenings turned calm. Life returned to its usual rhythm, or at least, it looked that way from the outside. But for Daniel, something inside him felt different. Not unsettled. Not confused. Just awake in a way he hadn't expected. He tried to distract himself with work, errands, small repairs around the house. But he kept catching himself glancing toward the Warren home next door, half wondering if Ethan might walk by or knock again. He didn't. Not at first. 3 days passed before it happened. Late afternoon sunlight streamed through Daniel's living room as he sorted mail at the table. A soft knock sounded on the front door. Not urgent. Not panicked. Just gentle. Daniel opened it. Ethan stood there, hands in the pockets of his hoodie, hair ruffled by the light breeze. He looked steady again, truly steady, in a way Daniel hadn't seen from him before. "Hey," Ethan said. "Hope it's okay I stopped by." "Of course," Daniel replied. "Come in." Ethan stepped inside, glancing around as though the house itself felt familiar now. "Comfortable." "I didn't want anything big," Ethan said. "Just wanted to talk. If that's okay." Daniel nodded. "It's always okay." They moved to the living room. Ethan took the same spot on the couch as that night of the storm. Daniel sat in the armchair again. But the atmosphere was different now, lighter, easier. "How's home?" Daniel asked. Ethan let out a slow breath. "Better. Calmer. My parents are trying. I don't think everything is magically fixed, but we're talking more. That's a good start." "Yeah." Ethan gave a small smile. "I learned something, though." "What's that?" "That I can't be the glue for everyone. Not anymore. I need to learn to be steady for myself. Not just for them." Daniel nodded quietly. "That's a hard lesson. Took me years to figure out." Ethan leaned back, eyes thoughtful. "I keep thinking about what you said. About things getting clearer, not easier." "It's true. It stuck with me," Ethan said. "A lot of things you said stuck." Daniel didn't respond right away. He wasn't sure what to say without shifting the air between them again. But Ethan didn't seem confused anymore. He wasn't searching for anything Daniel couldn't give. He was just showing up. Present. Growing. After a moment, Ethan spoke again. "I've been thinking. That night I came here, I wasn't just running from the storm. I was running from feeling like I had no place to breathe." Daniel listened carefully. "But I don't want to run anymore," Ethan continued. "I want to learn how to stand still. Even when it's messy." "That's brave," Daniel said. Ethan shook his head with a small laugh. "I don't know if it's brave. But it feels right." Daniel leaned forward slightly. "You're doing the work. That matters." Ethan looked at him then, really looked, but not with the searching confusion of that stormy night. Not with that unsteady longing. Instead, there was calm clarity in his eyes. "Can I tell you something?" Ethan asked softly. "Always. That night, I thought the safety I felt here was because of you. Just you." He paused. "Now I think it's because this was the first place I let myself be honest." Daniel's breath tightened. Not in fear. In understanding. "That makes sense," he said gently. "It does," Ethan said. "And I want you to know. I'm grateful. But I'm not confused." "Not anymore." Daniel nodded, feeling a weight he hadn't realized he was carrying ease from his shoulders. "I'm glad, Ethan. Truly." Ethan leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "I'm not looking for someone to fix things for me. I'm not looking for something I'm not ready for. I just want to keep growing. And I want good people around me while I do." "You have that," Daniel said quietly. "You always will." Ethan gave a small, warm smile. "You're one of those people." The words landed softly, like a feather brushing the surface of still water. Daniel felt something steady and calm settle inside him, the relief of knowing Ethan wasn't tangled in something he couldn't understand yet, and the comfort of knowing they had reached something honest. "Thank you," Daniel said. They sat in a gentle silence for a bit, the evening light shifting golden across the room. After a while, Ethan pulled something from his pocket, a folded piece of paper. "I drew something," he said. "It's nothing amazing. Just wanted you to have it. Daniel unfolded it. It was a simple sketch, pencil, clean lines. It showed Daniel's porch during the storm, the railing, the glow of the porch light, the rain slanting across the scene. Under the light, the faint outline of a figure stood in the doorway, Daniel himself, holding a towel. It was quiet, emotional, honest. Daniel swallowed. Ethan, this is beautiful. Ethan looked down, cheeks warming slightly. It's how I remember it. The moment things started feeling less impossible. Daniel folded the drawing carefully. Thank you. I'll keep it safe. They shared one more comfortable silence. No tension. No confusion. Just steady understanding. Eventually Ethan stood. I should get home for dinner. But can I come by sometime this week? Maybe we can sit on the porch again. Talk. I'd like that, Daniel said. Ethan smiled, truly smiled, then headed toward the door. He paused before stepping outside and looked back, voice soft. I'm okay now, Daniel. And you helped me get there. I won't forget that. Daniel felt the words settle deep. You did the hard part, he said. I just opened the door. Ethan nodded once, slow and sincere, then stepped into the evening air. Daniel closed the door gently, the house quiet again, but this time, it didn't feel empty. It felt peaceful. Clear. Daniel walked to the window and watched Ethan cross the yard toward his home, steady and sure. Some unexpected moments arrive like storms, sudden, disorienting, impossible to ignore. But what follows, if handled gently, can be something even more powerful. A shift. An awakening. A clarity that lingers long after the rain stops. Daniel felt it now, not fear, not confusion, just the quiet understanding that sometimes life brings people together for reasons that aren't dramatic or romantic or complicated. Sometimes, it's simply to remind them that they aren't walking through the world alone. And for both of them, that was enough. More than enough. The end.